The Galactic Council's central archives were a monument to order. Towering shelves of crystalline data storage stretched for kilometers beneath the surface of Council Station Prime, containing the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years of galactic civilization. Every treaty, every war, every diplomatic communication, every cultural observation from every member species was preserved here, organized, catalogued, and accessible to anyone with proper authorization. Most of it was never accessed. The archives were too vast, too comprehensive. Scholars and historians visited regularly, but they focused on recent records, on active treaties, on the living data that shaped current policy. The oldest sections, those containing information from the first millennia of the Council's existence, were largely ignored. The species that had created those records were long extinct. Their languages were dead. Their concerns were irrelevant. A single archivist was assigned to monitor the deep archives. Her name was Vex, and she had held the position for 43 years. She was a Voral, a species known for patience and attention to detail, and she took her job seriously. Every cycle, she performed a complete diagnostic of the ancient storage systems, checking for corruption, decay, or unauthorized access. She found none. She always found none. The deep archives were perfectly preserved and perfectly ignored. On the 43,217th day of her assignment, Vex discovered something new. It was not new, of course. Nothing in the deep archives was new. It was old. Incredibly old. Possibly the oldest file she had ever encountered. It was buried in a section so rarely accessed that the access logs showed no entries for 8,000 years. The file's metadata was corrupted, its origin date unreadable. But its encryption was intact, a complex layering of security protocols from a dozen extinct species, all working together to protect whatever lay within. Vex spent 3 cycles decoding the outer layers. Her bioluminescence flickered with growing excitement, a sensation she had not experienced in decades. When she finally breached the final encryption, she found herself staring at a symbol she had never seen before. It was a circle, divided into sections of blue and green and white. A simple design, yet somehow compelling. Vex stared at it for a long moment, her mind struggling to process its meaning. Below the symbol, in a dozen ancient languages, were warnings. The Voral language had changed over 10,000 years, but Vex could still read its older forms. The message was stark. Beware the ones from the blue world. They are patient. They are dangerous. They do not forget. ***. The same message appeared in the languages of 11 other extinct species. Each version was slightly different in phrasing, but the meaning was identical. Vex sat back, her bioluminescence flickering in patterns of deep confusion. The blue world. What blue world? There were thousands of blue planets in the galaxy. Which one had inspired such fear in a dozen ancient civilizations? She searched for more information. The file contained references to other documents, other warnings, but the links were dead, their targets lost to time and data corruption. All that remained was the symbol and the warnings. For 3 days, Vex debated what to do. Protocol required her to report any significant discovery to her superiors. But the file was so old, so obscure, so clearly irrelevant to current galactic affairs. The warnings, if they had ever been accurate, referred to a threat that had not materialized in 10,000 years. Whatever the ancient species had feared, it was clearly gone. She decided to file a brief report and move on. It was her duty. But she did not expect anyone to read it. Her report was 3 sentences long, ***, ancient warning discovered in deep archives. References of blue world species described as patient and dangerous. No current threat identified. Recommend archiving for historical reference. ***. She attached the symbol and sent it to the appropriate department. Then she returned to her routine, monitoring the deep archives, checking for corruption, finding none. She did not know that her report had been automatically forwarded to a junior clerk in the Council's Historical Research Division. She did not know that the clerk, a young Quarn named Velk, had become fascinated by the symbol and had begun searching for references to it in other ancient records. She did not know that Velk's search had led him to a system designation that had been marked as uninhabited for 10,000 years. Sol, the blue world. Vex's report gathered digital dust for 6 months. Then, on an unremarkable cycle, the deep space listening post at the edge of known space detected something unusual. A signal. Focused. Directed. Repeating on a loop. When translated, it contained only 5 words. We remember. We are coming. Prepare, Asterisk asterisk. The signal's origin was traced to the Sol system. Vex's terminal chimed with an urgent message from Council headquarters. Her bioluminescence flickered wildly as she read it. The warnings. The blue world. The patient, dangerous species that did not forget. They had been real. All of it. And now, after 10,000 years, they were coming. Vex stared at the symbol on her screen, the circle of blue and green and white, and felt a cold dread settle into her ancient bones. The forgotten warnings had not been forgotten by everyone. The centuries passed. The warnings faded. The symbol that had once struck fear into a dozen ancient civilizations became a curiosity, then a puzzle, then a forgotten relic. The first to forget were the scholars. They debated the meaning of the ancient texts for a few generations, proposing theories and counter-theories, publishing papers that no one read. Some argued that the blue world referred to a specific planet now lost. Others suggested it was a metaphor for the unknown, a way for ancient species to express their fear of what lay beyond their borders. A few radical thinkers proposed that the warnings were literal, that a dangerous species had actually existed and then vanished. But those voices were dismissed as romantic, unscientific. By the 1,000-year mark, the debate was over. The consensus was clear. The warnings were mythological. Every species had boogeyman stories, tales told to frighten children into obedience. The blue world was simply one such tale, preserved by accident in the ancient archives. The humans will get you, parents would say to misbehaving young, not knowing that the word human had ever referred to anything real. It was just a sound, a nonsense word that meant monster in the context of bedtime stories. The symbol appeared in children's books, illustrated as a fanciful planet with swirling colors. It appeared in entertainment holos, as the homeworld of imaginary villains. It appeared in academic papers about comparative mythology, grouped with other ancient boogeyman figures from extinct cultures. No one thought it was real. The archives themselves contributed to the forgetting. Data degraded over millennia, even with the best preservation systems. The original warnings became fragmented, their languages partially untranslatable, their context lost. The symbol remained, but its meaning became increasingly obscure. By the 5,000-year mark, the word human had disappeared entirely from common usage. It existed only in the deepest archives, in files that no one accessed, in languages that no one spoke. The species it referred to, if it had ever existed, was as extinct as the civilizations that had warned about it. The galaxy moved on. New species joined the Council. New alliances formed. New threats emerged and were defeated. The ancient warnings became less than history. They became myth, then legend, then nothing at all. Young cadets still heard stories, of course. Every species had its boogeyman. The Vorl told their young about the drowning shadows that would pull them into the deep if they misbehaved. The Quarn warned of the empty ones, who would steal their reflections. The Crawl told tales of ancient enemies who still lurked at the edges of known space. And sometimes, in the quieter moments of these storytelling sessions, a parent might say, "Be good, or the humans will get you." It was just a phrase, a tradition passed down through generations without meaning. The parents who said it did not know where it came from. The children who heard it did not care. It was just a word, a sound, a piece of cultural flotsam floating on the surface of 10,000 years of history. The scholars who occasionally stumbled across the ancient warnings in their research dismissed them with the confidence of established consensus. Ah, yes, the human myth, they would say. A classic example of convergent boogeyman folklore across multiple extinct species. Fascinating but irrelevant. They wrote papers. They gave lectures. They built careers on explaining away the warnings. No one asked the obvious question: why would 12 separate species, separated by vast distances and cultural differences, all independently develop the same boogeyman story about the same blue world with the same symbol? No one asked because the answer was too frightening to consider. The humans, if they had ever existed, were gone. That was the consensus. That was the foundation upon which generations of scholarship had been built. But the archives did not say the humans were gone. The archives said they were patient, dangerous, and that they did not forget. The galaxy, comfortable in its myths and consensus, did not consider what patience might mean on a scale of 10,000 years. It did not consider that a species that could wait that long might be waiting still. It did not consider that the boogeyman stories might be true. In a small orbital workshop on a forgotten moon, a young Quarn named Velk sat alone, staring at a data slate. He was a junior researcher in the Council's historical division, a position so insignificant that no one noticed when he spent his evenings on personal projects. His project was the ancient warnings. He had found Vex's report in the archives, buried under centuries of neglect. The symbol intrigued him. The warnings haunted him. He had spent 2 years tracking down every reference to the blue world in every ancient text he could access. The pattern was undeniable. 12 species, separated by thousands of light years and millions of years of evolution, all telling the same story. A blue world. A dangerous species. A warning to future generations. Velk did not believe in coincidence. He did not believe in convergent mythology. He believed in evidence. And the evidence pointed to one conclusion: the warnings were real. He had also found something else. A star chart, fragmentary and partially corrupted, that showed the location of the blue world. It was marked with the same symbol that appeared on the warnings. Sol. The system was marked as uninhabited in current council records. But the ancient charts showed something different. They showed a thriving civilization, a species that had been contacted, allied with, and then, what? Velk did not know. The records after that point were missing, erased, deliberately destroyed. He stared at the symbol on his screen, the circle of blue and green and white, and felt a cold certainty settle into his chest. The humans were not a myth. They were real. And somewhere, somehow, they were still out there. He just had to convince the council to listen. He did not know that, at that very moment, a signal was traveling across the void. A focused, directed message, repeating on a loop. We remember. We are coming. Prepare, asterisk asterisk. The humans had not forgotten. They had been waiting, patiently, for 10,000 years. The myth was about to become reality. The listening post was called Vigil Station. It sat on a barren moon at the very edge of known space, its sensors pointed outward into the darkness, waiting for signals that never came. For 300 years, it had detected nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional stray transmission from passing cargo vessels. The analyst on duty was a young Voral named Thrax. His shift was 6 hours from ending. He was bored. The alarm that shattered his boredom was unlike anything he had ever heard. It was not the routine ping of a cargo vessel or the familiar squawk of a military transmission. It was a sustained, urgent tone that indicated only one thing: first contact protocol. Thrax's bioluminescence flickered wildly as he scrambled to his console. The signal was strong, focused, directed, not a random broadcast bleeding into space, but a deliberate message aimed at someone. At anyone. At them. He locked onto the signal and began the translation protocols. The language was unknown, but the structure was simple, almost primitive. Repetition. Pattern. Meaning encoded in the spaces between words. The translation completed in 17 seconds. We remember. We are coming. Prepare, asterisk asterisk. Thrax stared at the words. His bioluminescence froze in a pattern of pure white, the Voral equivalent of complete, utter incomprehension. He ran the signal again. Same result. He checked the origin. The system was designated SOL, 3 on ancient charts, a star at the edge of the galaxy's spiral arm. Current council records marked it as uninhabited. No civilization. No activity. No reason for anyone to notice it. Thrax transmitted the signal and his analysis to council headquarters. Then he sat back and waited, his mind racing through possibilities. A hoax? A misunderstanding? A rogue transmission from some unknown source playing games? The return message from headquarters came within minutes. It was not an analysis or a request for more information. It was a single word, in the urgent red of highest priority. Confirm. Thrax confirmed. The signal was real. The origin was real. The words were real. We remember. We are coming. Prepare, asterisk asterisk. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates from 100 species shouted over each other, demanding information, demanding action, demanding someone explain what was happening. The presiding officer, an ancient Voral named Vex, the same Vex who had discovered the ancient warnings decades ago, struggled to restore order. Silence, she thundered, her bioluminescence blazing with authority. We have a signal from an unknown source. We will analyze it calmly and rationally. Panic serves no purpose. A junior delegate from the Quarn raised a trembling manipulator. The origin. Sol. I have seen that designation before. In the ancient archives. The warnings. The blue world. The chamber fell silent. Vex's bioluminescence flickered. She remembered. The file she had found 43 years ago. The symbol. The warnings from a dozen extinct species. Asterisk, beware the ones from the blue world. They are patient. They are dangerous. They do not forget. Asterisk. She had dismissed it as historical curiosity. She had filed her report and moved on. We need the archives, she said. All of them. The oldest sections. Find everything related to Sol. To the blue world. To the warnings. Researchers scrambled. Data flowed. The ancient records, ignored for millennia, were suddenly the most important documents in the galaxy. What they found was fragmentary. The warnings were there, preserved in a dozen dead languages. The symbol was there, the circle of blue and green and white. But the context was missing. The history was gone, deliberately erased or simply lost to time. All that remained was the fear. A young Quarn researcher named Velk, who had spent years studying the warnings, stood before the council. His voice trembled, but his words were clear. The ancient species knew them. They called them humans. They made a pact with them long ago. The humans helped them win a war. And then, he paused. And then they betrayed them, erased them from records, destroyed their colonies, left them for dead. How do you know this? A Kral delegate demanded. The records are fragmentary. Velk held up a data slate. I have spent 2 years cross-referencing every mention of Sol, every reference to the blue world, every scrap of data from the period. The pattern is consistent. The humans existed. They were powerful. They were betrayed. And the last thing the ancient species recorded before they erased everything was this: they do not forget. The chamber was silent. Vex spoke, her voice barely a whisper. The signal. We remember. We are coming. Prepare. They are telling us they remember. They are telling us they are coming. They are telling us to prepare. Prepare for what? Someone asked. No one answered. No one needed to. A tactical officer rushed into the chamber, her face pale with terror. Long-range sensors have detected something at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts. Hundreds. Thousands. Moving in formation. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the darkness of space and the distant, growing points of light. Ships. Thousands of ships. Moving with silent, deadly purpose toward Council space. Vex stared at the screen. Her ancient bioluminescence flickered weakly, a single thought echoing through her mind. They do not forget. The warnings had been real. The myths had been true. And now, after 10,000 years of patient waiting, the humans had returned. The Armada was already on its way, and the Council, which had dismissed them as legend, had nothing left to do but wait. The human fleet did not attack. This was, by any reasonable assessment, the most terrifying thing about it. The ships arrived in silence. One moment, the sensors showed empty space at the edge of Council territory. The next, thousands of vessels materialized as if they had always been there, their hulls absorbing light, their drives leaving no trace, their presence announced only by the gravitational disturbances of their mass. They positioned themselves with cold precision. A squadron here, blocking the main trade route to the Voral homeworld. A battle group there, surrounding the Quarn Engineering Academy. A massive command vessel, larger than anything in the Council's fleet, hanging in synchronous orbit above Council Station Prime itself. No weapons fired. No demands were broadcast. No threats were made. The ships simply waited. On Council Station Prime, panic was barely contained. Delegates shouted over each other, demanding military responses, diplomatic overtures, evacuation protocols. The Kral Admiral, ancient and battle-scarred, stared at the sensor displays with an expression of absolute, uncomprehending horror. They could have destroyed us already, he whispered. They have the position, the firepower, the element of surprise. A single volley would cripple our defenses. But they wait. Why do they wait? No one had an answer. The presiding officer, the elderly Voral named Vex, finally found her voice. We must communicate. We must ask what they want. The council chamber fell silent. The idea was obvious, terrifying, and unavoidable. The hail was sent on all frequencies, in every language in the council's database. It was simple, desperate, and utterly sincere. Unknown fleet. This is the Galactic Council. We do not know who you are or what you want. Please respond. What do you want? The silence that followed was the longest minute in galactic history. Then the human fleet responded. The voice that filled the council chamber was calm, measured, and utterly devoid of aggression. It was the voice of someone stating simple facts, without emotion, without threat, without anything except patient certainty. 10,000 years ago, your ancestors made a pact with ours. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. They came to us in their time of need. An enemy was overwhelming them. They begged for our help. We gave it. Our ships fought alongside theirs. Our soldiers died on their worlds. Our engineers rebuilt their fleets. We saved them from extinction. A pause. The chamber was absolutely silent. In return, they promised us alliance, friendship, a place in the community of species. They promised we would not be alone. Another pause. Longer this time. When the war was won, they decided we were too dangerous to keep. Too powerful. Too different. They gathered their forces and attacked our colonies without warning. They burned our worlds. They killed our people. They erased us from their records and pretended we had never existed. The voice did not change. It did not become angry or accusatory. It simply continued, calm and patient. They thought we were extinct. They were wrong. Some of us survived. We hid. We rebuilt. We waited. The final words were the most devastating of all. We have been waiting for 10,000 years. Now we are here to collect what we are owed. The chamber was paralyzed. Delegates stared at each other, at the view screens showing the silent fleet, at the ancient archives they had dismissed as myth. Vex found her voice. Her bioluminescence flickered weakly. What do you consider owed? What do you want from us? The human voice responded immediately. We want what was promised. Alliance. Friendship. A place in the community of species. A pause. We do not want war. We do not want revenge. If we wanted those things, we would have taken them already. You cannot stop us. You know this. The truth of the statement was undeniable. The human fleet could have destroyed the council 100 times over. They had chosen not to. We want what we were denied. We want to be seen. We want to be known. We want to be part of the galaxy that rejected us. Another pause. When the voice spoke again, it was softer. Almost human. We have been alone for 10,000 years. That is long enough. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not the silence of fear or confusion. It was the silence of a paradigm shifting, of old certainties crumbling, of a debt that had been owed for 10 millennia finally coming due. The Krall Admiral was the first to speak. His ancient voice was rough but steady. You saved our ancestors. They betrayed you. And now you have returned, not for revenge, but for friendship. Yes, the human voice said. Is that so hard to believe? The Admiral considered the question. He thought about his own species, about the wars they had fought, the enemies they had crushed, the betrayals they had avenged. He thought about what it would mean to wait 10,000 years and then ask not for blood, but for connection. Yes, he admitted. It is hard to believe, but I am beginning to understand. The human voice was quiet for a moment. Then it said, You have much to learn about us. We have much to learn about you. That is what alliance means. That is what we were promised. Vex stepped forward, her ancient form trembling, but her voice steady. We cannot undo what our ancestors did. We cannot bring back your dead or restore your lost centuries. But we can offer what they promised. Alliance. Friendship. A place among us. She paused. If you will accept it. The silence stretched. On the view screen, the human ships remained motionless, their intent unreadable. Then slowly the massive command vessel began to move. Not away. Not toward. Simply forward. Toward the council station. Toward the heart of the galaxy they had been denied for 10,000 years. The human voice spoke one final time. We accept. The fleet did not attack. It did not demand. It simply arrived. And in arriving it changed everything. The council's oldest records had warned them. The myths had been true. The boogeyman was real. But the boogeyman, it turned out, only wanted to come home. The translation took 17 days. 17 days of frantic work by the best linguists, historians, and xenopsychologists the council could assemble. 17 days of the human fleet waiting in patient silence, their ships hanging in orbit around 100 worlds, their presence a constant reminder of the debt that had been owed for 10,000 years. When the translation was finally complete, the council convened in emergency session. The document was long, complex, and devastating. It was not a single record but a collection. Fragments from a dozen extinct species, cross-referenced and verified, telling the same story from different perspectives. The story began with a war. 30,000 years ago, a great enemy had swept across the galaxy. The Vorthan, a species so aggressive, so powerful, that they had crushed every civilization in their path. The young species of the time, barely spacefaring, had no chance. They were being systematically exterminated. In their desperation, they sent out a plea to anyone who would listen. And someone did. The humans. They came from a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. They were strange, fierce, and utterly unlike any species the Coalition had encountered. They fought with terrifying efficiency and died with stubborn refusal to stay dead. They developed new weapons overnight. They adapted to every Vorthan tactic. They turned the tide of the war. The war lasted a century. By the end, the Vorthan were defeated, and the humans had saved the Coalition from extinction. The Coalition's leaders were grateful. They signed treaties. They made promises. Alliance. Support. A place in the galactic community. The humans, who had been alone for so long, accepted with what the records described as almost childlike hope. Then the Coalition's leaders began to fear. The humans were too powerful, too different, too unpredictable. They had saved the Coalition, yes, but what if they decided to conquer it instead? What if their help was just the first step in a longer strategy? What if the galaxy simply traded one enemy for another? The records showed the debates, the rationalizations, the careful construction of justification. Asterisk, they are dangerous. They must be eliminated. It is the only way to ensure our safety. Asterisk. The attack came without warning. Coalition forces, united for the first time since the war, descended on human colonies across the galaxy. They burned them. They killed everyone they found. They erased every trace of human existence from their records and pretended the alliance had never happened. They thought humanity was extinct. They were wrong. Some humans survived. A few ships, scattered across the darkness. They gathered. They hid. They rebuilt. And they waited. The records ended there. But the story did not. Now 10,000 years later, the humans had returned. Their fleet was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their technology was beyond comprehension. They could have destroyed every world that had betrayed them. They had the power, the position, the justification. They did not. Vex, the ancient Voral who had first discovered the warnings, stood before the council. Her bioluminescence was steady now, calm with the certainty of someone who had finally understood. They are not here for revenge, she said. They are not here for conquest. They are here for what they were promised. A Kral delegate growled. And what is that? What could possibly be worth waiting 10,000 years? Vex looked at him. A place. A home. A community that does not fear them, does not betray them, does not pretend they do not exist. She paused. They have been alone for 10,000 years. That is longer than any of our species have existed. They have had nothing but memory and patience and the hope that one day, someone would remember the promise. The chamber was silent. A young Quarn researcher, Velk, spoke hesitantly. The records show they accepted our ancestors' promises with almost childlike hope. They wanted to belong. They wanted to be part of something larger than themselves. He paused. They still want that. After everything. They still want that. The weight of the words settled over the council. A species that had been betrayed, slaughtered, erased, and still, after 10,000 years, they asked only for what they had been promised. Not blood. Not vengeance. Just connection. The human fleet's representative, a woman named Chun, appeared on the main view screen. Her face was calm, patient, lined with an age that no one could measure. You have read the records, she said. It was not a question. We have, Vex confirmed. Then you understand. We did not come to punish you for what your ancestors did. They are dead. Their guilt died with them. She paused. We came because we have been waiting. For 10,000 years, we have been waiting for someone to remember. To acknowledge. To say, yes, you existed. Yes, you helped. Yes, you were wronged. She looked at the council, her dark eyes holding something that might have been hope. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We do not want your submission. Another pause. We want what we were promised. A place. A home. A chance to be part of something other than our own patient, lonely survival. The council had no answer. They had spent 10,000 years forgetting. The humans had spent 10,000 years remembering. Vex stood slowly. Her ancient voice was steady. You saved our ancestors. They betrayed you. And now you have returned, not for revenge, but for... She searched for the right word. For family. Chin nodded. For family. Yes. The silence that followed was the longest in the council's history. Then one by one the delegates stood. The Kral. The Quarn. The Voral. 100 species, rising in acknowledgement of a debt that had been owed for 10,000 years. Vex spoke for all of them. We cannot give you back the centuries you lost. We cannot undo what our ancestors did. But we can give you what they promised. She paused. A place. A home. A family. If you will have us. On the view screen, Chen's face did not change. But something in her eyes shifted. Something that looked, to those watching, very much like the end of a 10,000-year wait. We will, she said. The human fleet did not celebrate. There were no cheers, no fireworks, no displays of triumph. The ships simply settled. Their weapons powered down. Their formations loosened. They became, for the first time in 10,000 years, not an armada but a community. The Council's oldest records had warned them. Asterisk, beware the ones from the blue world. They are patient. They are dangerous. They do not forget. Asterisk. They had been right about everything except the danger. The humans were dangerous, yes. But not to those who remembered. Not to those who kept their promises. The danger was for those who forgot. And the Council, after 10,000 years, had finally remembered.